Welcome back to our program, Hollywood Structured. As some of you already know, our program is designed to help the young people who wish to enter the entertainment field, may it be music, nightclub work, theater, film, television. It is also designed to help the parents and the educators of those young people, to help them understand their wants, their needs, and the pitfalls and the traps they may fall into unless thoroughly acquainted with the inner workings of Hollywood. Today, as our special guest, we have someone whom I've known for quite a while, whom I respect a great deal, who started out wanting to be a star. She knew she was going to be a star. Actually, she was a redhead, and she thought she was going to be the next Lucille Ball. She was an avid reader. And now, guess what? She's a very well-known and very well-respected producer, writer, director, who has had many nominations, and as a matter of fact, just got a nomination from the Directors Guild for one of her afternoon school specials. Her name is Joanna Lee. Hello, Joanna.
Hello, Lilyan.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Before Joanna shares with us her expertise and her glory, I am jealous of the Emmy that I see in front of me, I would like to speak to you today about something in Hollywood which is dreadful, which is called competition. I mean competition as it pertains to the entertainment field. And to show you what it looks like, I brought with me today those enormous books which are called in New York Player's Guide, and which are called in Los Angeles Academy Players Directory. Those books, if you thumb through, contain the faces of 73,000 actors and actresses. That's competition, isn't it? And if you open one of those books, actually your face could be in one of those books if you get an agent, but only if you have an agent. Until then, you just couldn't look at it. Now, when you thumb through those books, you're going to see faces that you will recognize easily, but you won't know their names because they are not big stars, but they are working constantly in the industry. Those people will be in competition with you, or you will be in competition with them. It is rather difficult when you get to Hollywood. Because you see, what you're learning in school and what you're learning in colleges, and let's say that you get rave reviews in the production in school. That's good. It's good for school. It's good for college. Once you get in Hollywood or on Broadway, that doesn't count. You have to start from the bottom again. You have to start establishing yourself as if you had learned nothing in college, because work is different from school. Now, I would like not to discourage you. I would like, as a matter of fact, to say to you that if you want to learn and you want to grow in the entertainment field, then stick to it, because all of those faces in those books at one time were just like you, beginners and unknown. Well, let's talk to somebody who is not an unknown.
But I was.
Joanna, let me ask you a few questions. Are you from California?
Well, I was raised here. I went to school here. I wasn't born here. I was born in New Jersey.
How did you happen to come to California?
Well, actually, I like to think that it was my will that drew my mother, to make up the decision, because I had planned from quite early in my life. I was about 8 when I decided what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and it involved being here and being in this business. So perhaps coincidentally, my mother decided it was time to move to California. The climate was better. Or perhaps she listened to what I was saying. But at any rate, we did. We moved here when I was 8.
So you went to school in California.
Mm-hmm.
And did you study then in the drama department? Did you study singing, dancing, acting?
You know, I studied all of those things as a child, and had originally had ballet training and thought I would be a ballerina. Dancing was my first love. But I grew too tall, and they soon told me, even as a little girl, that I was going to, they could tell, I was going to be
really?
too tall. Oh, sure, they know by the time you're 7 or 8, you know. I, you know, knew that acting then would have to be it. I would have to be a star to fulfill my destiny, which I knew was here. And so I studied, yes, indeed.
Now, you are in school, and are you in all the productions in school?
No, I wrote all the productions in school. It never dawned on me that I might wind up as a writer. That was the last thing I ever thought of. I wrote everything. If anybody wanted a greeting card or, you know, a love letter or practically anything, I wrote it because it was so easy. It was so easy that I thought everyone could do it. It never dawned on me you could make a living from it. And also, when I was young, women were not anything, you know, they were not writers,
Mm-hmm.
women were not producers, women were not directors, women were actresses, that's all. If you were in this business, that's what you were. So I went on wanting to be an actress, all the while writing.
Now, would you say that, I know that you love to read, would you say that it helped you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because I didn't have the advantage of a college education. And I married very young. I was a mother at 18. And but reading had been something that I had done all of my life, and it was very much encouraged in my family. Everyone in my family were voracious readers. And my mother had been somewhat of a scholar, and so that, you know, I sort of knew what was right and what was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
School I sort of ignored. Basically, I ignored school. It just didn't appeal to me. And so I just didn't do much in the way of, you know, formal. Everything I had to do my own way and myself. So yes, I've spent a lot of my life in libraries. Yeah.
So in other words, the young people, if they want to learn, can go to library even if they don't have any money.
They absolutely, and they must. You can't do anything in this life. You know, even if you're going to be a brain surgeon, it isn't enough to know surgery. It isn't enough to be able to operate. You must know many other things. And if you're an actor, it isn't enough to have studied acting. You should know history. You should know the English language, certainly. You know, you should know foreign languages. You should know literature. All of that brings a depth to your work, whatever it is.
Okay, now you're 18 and you are married. Do you continue in acting?
No.
Or is there a little interlude?
No, no. I had a baby and was very, although I must say, when I was pregnant and terribly bored, I went to the library and decided to read everything they had in the library in the psychology department. And one by one, I went through every book that was in that small library, you know. But I took a little breather there, and for a while, you know, was a Santa Paula housewife and a mother, and then shortly thereafter divorced and came back to the big city in Los Angeles and started my career.
Now, what did you do when you came back?
The first thing I did, I was 20 and incredibly naive, and I had never done anything in the world for myself because I had gone from my mother's house to my husband's house, and he took care of everything. So I had to figure out what to do to earn a living. And I had a 2-year-old child with me, too, and I didn't have a clue what to do to earn a living. So I thought, well, I'm tall and I'm good-looking, I look good in clothes, why don't I go ahead and be a model? So I just said, okay, I'm going to be a model. That's what I'll do to earn a living. It sounded like a good idea to me. I was much too klutzy to ever be a waitress. I mean, that was out of the question. You know, I'd bump into chairs and drop plates. But I thought I could be a wonderful model. It didn't dawn on me you might need grace for that. You know, if you could fit the clothes, terrific, you know. So I fortunately, like the bee, you know, who doesn't know it can't fly, that old story, I had no idea of my limitations. That's the blessing of the young. Mm-hmm. So I had seen pictures in magazines of models, and I certainly had clothes like that, and I bought a case like I saw they carried, and I marched into Saks Fifth Avenue and said, you know, I want to see whoever hires the models because I'm here to come to work. I went to her and told her I had heard that it was a good store for me to, you know, start my southern modeling career, because I was from Northern California, I told her, which was Santa Paula, 70 miles away, but I made it sound like it was San Francisco. And you know, so I modeled for her.
Now,
Happened she needed one, you know, and she said, well, you certainly, and of course I hadn't even worn high heels before because I was in this little farming town, you know, and she said, you certainly have an unusual walk, and I said, well, that's how we do it in the North, isn't that how you do it here? You know, and I just like faked the whole thing quite easily, and it worked. She hired me. So that's how I started.
Did anybody help you, though, there?
Oh, yeah. So then then the first big show was coming up, and I was panicked because, you know, modeling, like everything else, you know, has its ways to do it, and ways to do the show, ways to walk, and show the clothes, all of which, you know, I didn't know. So I ran to one of the older girls and begged her help and went to her house at night and took modeling lessons from her, and she showed me how. So I was
Well, you
ready.
created the job for yourself.
Created
right?
the job for myself, as I
Now,
always have.
What happened after that? Tell me a little bit about the trapeze,
Oh,
because
well.
I think this is an incredible story.
Oh, yes. Well, then my girlfriend got discovered at Saks by a Hollywood producer, and she didn't want to she didn't want to get up and go in the interview. He gave her his card. I was dying, you know, it was her big break, but I couldn't understand why she didn't want to take it, so I asked her if I could borrow her big break. And could I please take the cards? And she wasn't going to go into this producer.
Yeah.
Could I do it? So I went in and said I was Miss Norwood, and the man looked at me, you know, and he said, weren't you blonde? Because she was a fabulous, elegant blonde. I said, no, always been a redhead, you know. And he said, oh, okay. So I got the job. That was how I started. I got my after card. And then I was a Hollywood starlet. Zap, you know, it just happened. So again, from something which I had created and sort of, you know, faked my way through. And I was at a party, and the producer who had a show on the air was talking at the bar with a friend, saying how difficult it was for him to find an actress in this town. He had this script, and she had to act, and it was a very dramatic show, and she had to swing on a trapeze because it was a story of a trapeze family.
Yes.
And, well, that's all I had to hear, you know. Knock, 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 hello. Hi there, isn't this unusual and amazing, but I just overheard what you said, and I am an actress, and here's my agent, da-da-da. And you won't believe this, but I just got back from Sarasota, Florida. And he blinked, and I said, we train there. The circus trains there. I've just left the circus. And he said, oh, my God, this is incredible, and hired me. Now, all I had to do when I got on the stage, and I had my leotards and my long fall, and all I had to do was climb the rope ladder 30 feet up and swing on the trapeze was all I had to do, because I said I just finished doing that the week before. So the stunt person showed me what it would be. They were coming right in close as I was swinging, so there was no stunt person, but that was fine because I had just come from the circus. And they threw it to me, and I had to swing, land back on the platform, and I did it. I just plain out did it, you know.
So you created all those jobs for yourself.
Lots
now,
of them.
what happened? How did you become a writer who
Well-
deserves all these awards? Wait a minute. I want to brag before I forget, because it's incredible. This one was given to you because you utilized.
Well, that one's going. That comes later in the whole scheme of things. But anyway, that's when I was the executive producer of Search for Tomorrow, a soap which was on the air for 30 years. And when I went back there to be the executive producer of Search, I decided that I wanted to do things that hadn't been done on soaps before. One thing that I did was look for the first black director. There had never, I researched and found out there had never been a black director on a soap opera, which I thought was, you know, incomprehensible. And found one and brought him out, Oz Scott. Then I hired a blind actor. I had a storyline of a blind performer. And I thought, why can't we have a blind actor play the blind performer? I mean, why not? And P&G, Procter & Gamble, were a little wary. They were afraid it might take extra time. And I said, I think not. I think not. I think this guy's a pro. I've seen him do a job as an actor. And, you know, I talked to the people on that show, and he didn't take a bit of extra time.
Now, do you think that you started a trend, because now they use a lot of handicaps?
Well, I don't know if I started a trend, but I do know that it worked well for us. It's Tom Sullivan. He's a marvelous musician and actor, and it worked very nicely.
Can we take a shot of this beautiful Emmy Award, please?
Okay, you want to know what that one's
Yes,
for?
please.
Let's see, which one's the Emmy for? The Emmy's for the Waltons Thanksgiving special. which I wrote, and that one was on the air. Oh, it ran about 7 seasons. You know, kept rerunning. It's their Thanksgiving special.
Okay, now that we've seen the award...
That was the highest-rated 2-hour ever on the air up to that time.
Please tell the audience how you started as a writer. Suddenly you became very well known as a writer.
Well, you see, that just was part of what I was speaking about earlier. Sometimes we have talents we don't know we have, and this is one, you know, that writing I had always done. And when my acting career was moving along somewhere, I was an actress about 2 years, you know, and it kind of became apparent to me, like I knew I couldn't be a ballerina way back when I was 8. I wasn't ever going to be a Hollywood star. It just sort of really hit me very clearly one day. And a combination of things, you know, made me quite sure that it just wasn't going to happen. Well, if I was going to be a star in this business, I had to be a star at something. So what next? You know, it wasn't going to be modeling, it wasn't going to be ballet, and it wasn't going to be acting. What's left? So I had been dating a writer, you know. I thought, I like his lifestyle. Why can't I be a writer? So, because he had great thousands of books. I was crazy about books. I thought, if I'm a writer, then there's a reason for me to have an enormous library. So I wrote a script. I had, after all, been an actress. I'd acted in a lot of shows. And I sat down and wrote a script for a show that was on the air, which I would recommend for young people to do, if you want to, you know, show people what you can do. And it right away, everybody liked it, and I got an agent from that script that I wrote right away, and was working, you know, within the month.
Were you writing drama? Were you writing
No, I started
comedy?
out writing sitcoms.
Really?
Yeah. I was funny in those days. You know, life was funny in those days. It was a funnier world, you know what I mean? And I wrote sitcoms. I wrote so many I can't begin to tell you. 27 Flintstones. I started the second year of that show and just wrote lots and lots and lots and lots of sitcoms. And then it evolved from there.
And how did you switch from situation comedy to
well,
drama?
life stopped being so funny, actually. And I stopped being so funny. Life started to get very serious. And things happen, you know, things happen in the world quite seriously. Things happened, you know, Jack Kennedy was killed. All my ideals were, you know, it was the 60s. Things were, whew, it was amazing what was going on. And it was impossible to write, for me, it was impossible for me to live on the level of the sitcom any longer. I began to get more serious, and my thoughts and my consciousness began to get more serious. And I could also see that the people coming in that were writing comedy were different. I had been writing the situational kind of stuff, families and children, and it was gentle comedy. Now the New York guys were coming in, and they were jokey. They told jokes, and it was a different, and I couldn't do that. And I could see that it was time to shift. And so I found one of my interests as a reader was the Old West. I found a show on the air called Death Valley Days about the Old West. And I said, you know, this could be my first. I have to convince people I can write drama. I've got to write one. Nobody wanted to hire me because I was a sitcom writer. But I convinced them how much I knew about the Old West. They were intrigued. I told them stories they didn't even know about, the producers, and got a script assignment and wrote one. And then I had my first drama. And so it evolved from there. And then once I was an authority on the Old West, it wasn't hard to switch to the South, and that brought me to the Waltons, you know, in Virginia, where indeed I had spent time as a child. And so that's how that all started.
Now you're a writer. When do you become a producer? When do you become a director? Because that's what you're doing now. You're doing it all.
Yes. Well, you see, it all unfolds. It unfolds, as they say. You know, just sit there and you shall be shown the way. So I was writing, and after a while, the networks, when I first started, writing used to be a fun thing to do. And you sort of sat down there and you and your producer agreed upon certain parameters, and then you just wrote your script. And after a while, that changed, and the network interference began to be unyielding, and I began to say, they can't tell me about this, they can't tell me about that, and I want to control my own work, and I want to be the producer. So I tried for a long time to convince people to hire me as a producer when I would get a writing assignment, and there weren't any women producers. There was one, actually, just one. And it was just unheard of. You know, women were not given that kind of power. So eventually, I thought, well, I can sue them, you know, for sexism, but then I'll never work again. What can I do about this? So I figured the only way to prove to them that I could produce was to produce. So I put my house, I hocked my house, quite literally. Unlike someone else we were talking of earlier who said she hocked her house to make a movie. I really did. And, sort of went into the bank and threw on my borrowed fur coat and said, I just need a few $1,000s, darling. I don't have a lot of time. Can you just give me this to get the movie started, and we'll talk later about the details. And I somehow pulled that off, too. And, the guy at Union Bank wrote me out a check. It got me started. And I came up with a script, and I called some friends, and suddenly I was in Greece making a movie, is what happened. I gathered together a cast and found myself in Greece making a movie at Christmas time. And that movie went to the Cannes Film Festival in 1975. And while it was not exactly what you'd call a commercial success, I made it. And it was shown.
It gave you the credit of producer and director. You directed it too.
And I also directed it, mainly because I couldn't afford to hire a director. But, and it worked. It worked because they can no longer say that I hadn't produced. I not only had produced, I had a movie that was invited to the Cannes Film Festival.
Now, how do you, I know that you're very socially conscious, but you're so much involved with afternoon school special, helping the young,
yes,
the young
because our
teenagers.
business started to change. I had my first, my movies of the week, had to do with child abuse and unwed teenage mothers. Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night being a good example, which that was the child abuse. I Want to Keep My Baby, Marielle Hemingway. These movies are still playing in syndication. I still see them. Those kinds of movies, like Normal People, about the retarded, all of those things, I had a chance to make them, and then suddenly those doors closed, and you couldn't make them anymore because fashions change. They change in programming like they do in clothes or art or anything else. And the socially conscious movies, just nobody wanted to hear from them any longer. And so it was very difficult for me because what they wanted me to write, I didn't do very well. There were certain kinds of stuff that I just don't feel comfortable with. That's when I gave up nighttime. I went back, did the soap for a year as an executive producer, and then came back here and found that to make the movies I wanted to make, there was really only one place to make them, and that was in the afternoon. And the ABC, kids have always been, my two sons have been everything to me. Raising my kid, means a lot. And the after-school specials and the CBS school break specials dealt with the subjects I wanted to deal with and with kids. And I really love kids, and I sort of often feel more comfortable with them and their concerns than I do with adults. So that's how I started. I started in that afternoon venue doing that. And I write and produce and direct them.
And you won the Humanitas Award.
Humanitas was for the kid who wouldn't quit. And what else? We got all kinds of...
You have so many here.
Yeah. It's
National Academy of Television Art and Science.
the Emmy, yeah. There were about 4 or 5 Emmy nominations. Yes, that was the 15 and Getting Straight. That was my CBS school break special. And that had Drew Barrymore and Corey Feldman.
That's right.
And some very good people.
You manage in those afternoon school special to assemble a very good cast all the time.
Yeah, I usually have some good stars in them. And because there are actors who care about kids too, a lot of them. And actors who are parents and feel, it well worth their time, although in the specials, because there's so little money to make them and everybody works for scale, but it's a labor of love. Doing the specials is a labor of love for the crews, for the actors, for everybody, They move fast, there's not much money, but you feel like you've done something worthwhile when you're done.
And you shoot them in a record time.
6 to 8 days.
Wow. We are at the 3-minute marks. It's when you're supposed to address the young people, or the parents, or the educators, and it's all yours.
Well, I think about having dreams. I think there's nothing more important for a young person than to have a dream. And I always had lots of dreams. And with dreams, comes the vision of the world you want to be in and how you want to function in that world. There's a poem by Langston Hughes, called Raisin in the Sun. And it's just what happens to a dream deferred. And then the whole poem goes on. Does it do this? Does it do that? Ending with, or does it wither and dry like a raisin in the sun? And I think, don't ever let your dreams become raisins in the sun. Don't ever let them wither and dry. If you have a dream, sometimes you have to give up absolutely everything. People say, what do I have to do? I say, well, you just have to be willing to give up everything. You know, you have to put it all on the line if you want to make your dream come true. But if you have the belief, and if you have the passion, because without the passion, life's so boring anyway. Why would anyone want to be without passion? And kids usually come equipped with strong passions. God love them. That's why I like them. Work with those passions. Make your dreams come true. Don't let anybody say no to you. All my life, people have said no to me, and I just don't listen to it. And that's what you must do. You must live your life with a dream, something that you want to accomplish that will be yours. And then you must be prepared to work very, very hard and sacrifice if you must, because nothing comes without sacrifice. But the reward when you've made your dream come true is glorious. It's glorious, so I wish you that.
I would like to thank Joanna for sharing her expertise and her experiences and her concern for the young people. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please, keep watching us because we keep watching out for you. Thank you. Be well. Till next time.